right into the goods here, boys. We kind of asked this question to Doogie, but last night the Minnesota Timberwolves, without Karl-Anthony Towns, absolutely stuck it to the Memphis Grizzlies in the second half. Especially the fourth quarter. And Anthony Edwards was the conductor of the arena, and he was just the energy of the crowd, the energy of even like Memphis players getting mad at the officials, and Edwards amping up the crowd and kind of mocking Ja Morant and like going to shake his hand at one point. It was truly Anthony Edwards' night and team last night, and so I'm sure in the absence of Towns, this will lead to some very level-headed and reasonable discussions and debates about the future of the Timberwolves.
Yep.
But it really was one of those games that makes you think. It makes you think about team chemistry. It makes you think about roster construction. It makes you think about Karl-Anthony Towns. And I just want to start the conversation, unless you guys disagree, I just want to start the conversation by saying Karl-Anthony Towns is arguably their best player. Certainly statistically he is. Mm-hmm. And I don't think any sane person is suggesting that you just get rid of him. Just get his ass out of here. Get rid of him, right? Any future conversation on this Reckless Speculation Thursday, mind you, this is a safe space.
Reckless Speculation.
It's a safe space to go there, if you will. Any conversation about saying goodbye to Towns at some point in the future would be with the idea that you would get something of value back. You wouldn't just be getting rid of this guy that puts up, historical shooting numbers for a 7-footer.
Absolutely.
But the question of how good are the Wolves without Cat, and is there a chance that they could somehow be like Bill Simmons' Patrick Ewing theory throughout the years? Is there a chance that they are or would be better without this guy that shoots historical numbers from three as a 7-footer and puts up 25 points and double-digit rebounds, etc.? Like, let's dive into this conversation, Judd. You were at the arena last night.
Yeah, I was. And so here's the thing. This game is played by human beings. And that's where this becomes an important conversation, because if this was just played on paper or by talent, then Karl-Anthony Towns is fantastic. There's no question about it. But it's not. It's played by people who take on roles, and those roles are what create chemistry, and call it what you want. Call it chemistry, call it culture. I don't really care. It's very important. You play a lot of games. Things need to work. People need to know their roles, and people need to, more importantly, I think, embrace their roles. For instance, like this show, we all embrace our roles. Like
you guys just sit there and shut up while I rant about things.
Yep. I mean, we all embrace our roles. The fact that I have not been recognized by this MSBC committee is very upsetting. I believe I am sportscaster of the year. Everyone else can screw off. But anyway, so Karl-Anthony Towns, when he is playing, and I think this is where the conversation really becomes intriguing. When he is playing, he assumes this is his team. And he never shows any sign of saying, oh boy, Ant's got an it. Because he does. He has an it factor. But Ant turns it loose when he feels comfortable. So Ant's never going to overpower Cat to be the it guy unless Cat's not playing. For instance, D'Lo doesn't care. D'Lo's going to do what D'Lo does. And at no point in time do I feel like he's like, I am taking over this team. He does. Cat is always talking about the fact, post-game press conferences. There's a reason he comes out and always talks. And there's a reason why he insists on, we've got to toughen up and this and that. But as far as I'm concerned, it's all lip service. What we saw from Ant again last night, and it built up too. The fourth quarter was incredible. 17 points, absolutely the heartbeat. Showed what Ant can be. And as I prepped for this conversation this morning, that's the word I wrote down, heartbeat. The heartbeat of this team. Karl wants to be it, and he thinks he is. But he doesn't have the necessary factor to pull in his teammates. Anthony Edwards has it. It's a God-given talent. You can't say, this is me. Doesn't make Cat a bad player. But I think you have a problem until the day that Cat understands the floor what his role is.
Okay, well, let's put Judd in timeout here. We've lost Judd and his internet connection. We heard most of it, but let me. I think there's statistically, Karl-Anthony Towns, Dex, is their best player. Like, and this is the argument that I think it's hard to wrap your head around some of this, because when you start to suggest that they might be better in some ways without Cat, immediately you can just go to like the statistics and say, well, okay, well, he's find another guy that's gonna shoot like that as a 7-footer. You can't find another guy that's gonna put up like 23 and 10 and 5 assists or whatever. Like, statistically, he is their best player. And I'm not even saying automatically they would just be better if you extracted him. I think I'd want to know, what are you getting in the trade? What other pieces of value would you bring in as you look to build something? But the next 4 to 6 weeks are going to be a really interesting sort of maybe power shift in the Timberwolves, because you will get to see, okay, that thing that they did last night where they just ran Memphis out of the gym, are they going to do that more often? Are they going to play more freely? Is the energy going to be different? Is Anthony Edwards going to be different? So the Cat thing is going to kind of play out, in the next 4 to 6 weeks. But there's been many examples in NBA history, and there was one glaring one here 10 years ago, where a guy is statistically the best player on your team. DeMarcus Cousins, Kings. Yeah. Kevin Love is the example that I go back to with the Wolves, where statistically, like, God, this guy's putting up 25 and 14, and he's shooting threes every single night. DeMarcus Cousins was the same way. But the individual performance and statistics, for whatever reason, don't like integrate into the team, or they're not like enhancing the other 11 or 12 guys on the team. They're just like mercenaries out to get their own. And sometimes I feel like Towns, like against the Pacers last week, it felt like he was part of this whole team, and it all felt integrated together. And that was the plan that you thought you were getting when they signed Rudy Gobert or traded for him. But then there's a lot of other nights where it just feels like, okay, he's putting up his numbers, but his energy and his incessant foul trouble and his sort of harumph demeanor is dragging everyone else down. And so I hate that he's injured, but I love that they now have to sort of sink or swim without him just to see what it looks like the next 4 to 6 weeks.
I think two things are true. I think if you were to just ask me who is the more just gifted basketball player, Karl-Anthony Towns or Anthony Edwards, I would say Towns. Just in terms of just natural ability, Karl-Anthony Towns. The dude is 7 foot tall. He can hit 3-pointers before he can get low in the paint. He can grab rebounds. He can do literally anything and everything on the court. But there is something to be said about the chemistry, about the camaraderie, about body language, and about 8 years in the league, you kind of know who the guy is. There was a play yesterday where Anthony Edwards clearly gets fouled and probably should have gotten an one call. And instead of sitting there being, what? He's transitioning back, being like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't get the call. But he's transitioning back. He's getting back on defense. He's literally realizing, I needed to get that call, but I'm not going to sit here and stand and not help my team back. How many times have you seen Karl get up there? And look, Karl gets hacked a lot. I agree. He sometimes should be getting more calls than he isn't. But he just sits there and kind of mopes, and he's just dumbfounded by the fact, again, I can't believe I'm not getting the call. And here's Kyle Anderson and guys being like, dude, get back. I've seen this happen. Like, get back. You have to at least transition. You didn't get the call. It's a quick game. You can't just sit there and watch and plead your case. I love this idea that they get to figure this out kind of without Cat. Yeah, it's unfortunate he's injured. I don't wish injury upon the dude by any means. But there is definitely something about the mental makeup that this team could be better with it. It was different with the Wild with Parisi and Suter because those guys were up there in age and they just had to make a decision there. And it was gutsy, and it's going to hurt them still for 2 to 3 more years because of the buyout penalties that are against the Wild. But the Wild were better without Parisi and Suter. And I think the initial thought was, oh my God, like, yeah, the cap hits are going to stink, but are they even going to be better without them? Yes, they are better without Zach Parisi and Ryan Suter. And I'm curious how this now kind of affects from the Timberwolves side. How are they going to be better without Towns? And if they are indeed better, if they're, 5 to 7 games above 500 and just obviously improving without him, well, then what do you do long term?
And they could easily just come out on Saturday as their next game against OKC, and they could just like put a dud up, and then it puts another wrench in into this discussion. And I will say that game at Indiana the night before Thanksgiving, it was kind of similar in that it felt like the vibes were there, the chemistry and the sharing and moving of the basketball all felt like it was there in that game, and Cat was very much a key figure in that win. So we have seen what it looks like at its peak, including Cat, and we saw it last year, including Cat. But I just think I keep going back to this, man. It's been 8 years, and I just think when Cat is the featured leading player and culture setter on a team, that team is not going to go all that far. They're just not. Like they can get to the playoffs, and they did last year. I think he needs to settle into more of a supporting cast role, both as a leader and as a player. If he can be like the second or third guy, and there's clearly a pecking order, and that's why the next 4 to 6 weeks are going to be really interesting. Does Anthony Edwards officially step into that role? Is he really the guy that's going to, okay, now this is officially his team. Sorry it had to happen because of a calf strain. But now when you come back, Cat, everyone's deferring to Anthony Edwards. And Ant has to, this is the thing about Ant too. There's a lot of games where he just will take either the full night off defensively, or last night for 48 minutes, that dude was all in engaged defensively. He was a menace on the perimeter. He only scored like 1 point between the second and third quarters on offense, but he was still moving the ball, getting the ball to teammates. And then when it came back around in the fourth quarter, now it's his time to just take the game over. So I don't know. I'm just posing the question. To what extent are and would they be better without Karl-Anthony Towns? And I don't know how you can't at least think about that after what happened last night. 1 game sample, totally get it, Judd.
Do you think Cat can do those things, though?
Take a kind of a back seat?
Yes.
I don't know. It's weird because I think he really wants to be sort of the man in that regard.
Yes.
But he doesn't necessarily have the personality or the tools. I've tried to think a lot about like what bothers me about him. Why do I get so like irrationally annoyed by him? And I think it's that he lets circumstances, external circumstances, the flow of the game, officials, his own makes or misses, whatever. He lets external things sort of dictate his own emotions. He doesn't control things as much. And he's kind of a basketball victim. He just has sort of he's being victimized by things, right? It's unfair that this is happening, or he has more control. He would have more control than he sometimes thinks he does if he had a different personality.
Right. But the
KG
issue is,
felt like everything was always in his control.
yes.
Kobe felt like everything was always in his control.
But what did those guys give off? They gave off great vibes. Ant, when he's going well, gives off great vibes. Cat doesn't.
And by great, I mean joyful, hard nosed.
I mean, I want to follow them.
Yeah.
Like I like, it's not hard to see people who you're like, and there's not a ton of these folks, but when you meet someone and you're like, I'd follow that person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ant, when he's going well, does that. Kobe, Jordan, and I'm going through some great names here, but they did that, and you were like, okay, I'm all in there. And with Cat, it's like he wants that, but he doesn't have it. And then I just feel like, yes, victim is the perfect word. Fouls are never his fault, and he doesn't get angry. He really pouts.
Yeah, last night felt like it felt more joyful. It felt more free flowing. Anthony Edwards just felt, I don't know, he just felt like he was in control of things more. It was just there was something about it that you can't just quantify in a box score. And when you jumped out for a second, I brought up the examples of like there are other big men in recent NBA history that are statistically, unquestionably, are the best player on the team, but it doesn't translate to like full team harmony. DeMarcus Cousins with the Kings for all those years.
Yep.
Kevin Love with the Timberwolves.
Yep.
Kevin Love needed to sort of go be like the third guy, or go be and even now he's having this resurgence as like a guy that kind of comes in as the fourth guy or the guy off the bench or whatever, in his 30s now.
keep in mind too, he has really found himself as a person. Like think about, and this is the thing. If you're going through struggles, off the court mentally, nobody's saying that you are a bad guy. But you think about like how long it took Kevin Love to find himself. And so like credit to him, he's done a lot of work on his own personal life. But those are the type of things I'm saying that you just can't show up at the arena and be like, I'm the guy. Nobody can. You don't get to name yourself captain.
No. So it's interesting. It's interesting. The other thing wait, before we get to this, there's another topic I want to hit on from last night's game quick, but I don't think we're going to resolve this cat thing, but I don't think it's unreasonable to keep asking the question. Okay. What does this team's pecking order need to look like? And what would they be like without Cat and with other assets instead? With the start to the season here is very discouraging.
Yes.
No, they're back to 500 now, but this next 4 to 6 weeks is going to tell you a lot about what this thing should look like going forward.
And the one thing I saw on the floor last night that was very important that we probably have not seen a lot of is everyone who played, I felt for the most part, understood what their role was supposed to be. There's been a lot of confusion. Like last night, defensively, they played a really good game and they cleaned things up. And I think part of that was because everyone on the floor understood, here's what you need to do. And you need to do it too.
Yeah, it was like Jalen Noel and Anthony Edwards, it's your guys' job to get buckets. There's going to be some of the time where it's going to be D'Lo's job to get buckets, but he's also going to have to facilitate and get this thing going. Everybody else, you're moving off the ball, you're trying to grab rebounds, but unsuccessfully. Like out-rebounded by 30 last night. You're playing perimeter defense. Okay, one other thing from last night. We'll get to some old tweets exposed here too. This idea that Rudy Gobert didn't really even do anything last night. You're paying this guy all this money. How can he only grab one rebound? They got out-rebounded by 30 last night. And yeah, like it's very rare that you would ever be out-rebounded by 30, let alone win the game. So that alone is like worth a 30 for 30 documentary. How the hell did that happen? But last night, if you were watching closely or just watching even at all, I guess, in the fourth quarter, was a great example of Gobert's hidden value that we talked about when they traded for him back in July. Mm-hmm. That there's going to be nights where he does stuff the box score and goes like he was 7 for 7 from the field a couple games ago. There's going to be games where he goes for like 19 and 18 rebounds and 3 blocks. But there's a lot of things that he does that just don't show up as a block or a rebound. Mm-hmm. Memphis turned the ball over 24 times last night. They shot 42%. They only scored 101 points, 15 below their season average. Was that just a coincidence? Did you see how many shots, and you were sitting right there, did you see how many shots Rudy either turned away, altered, or just like derailed an entire possession? Or a guy throws a bad pass because Rudy Gobert is standing there with his wingspan. Last night, fourth quarter, was a great example. His presence altered that game. Whether he was grabbing rebound, like he's contesting shots. He's not going to contest shots and grab all the rebounds.
Sure.
So you can complain about the box score all you want, but him being in the game for 30 minutes or whatever it was after foul trouble was a huge, huge reason why Memphis turned the ball over so much and scored only 101 points.
Yes, which is exactly the opposite of what took place without Gobert in the playoffs, right? Like if Ja doesn't get to the basket like he did in the playoffs, the Wolves win that series. Mm-hmm. So,
yes. All right. Old tweets exposed. Let's do it here to wrap this Mackie and Judd episode. This is where Declan goes back in the archives and humiliates us, basically.
Okay, so I was looking back at things we were saying at the beginning of the year, and I was trying to pull some stuff, and there's definitely some contenders, and probably can have multiple weeks of old takes exposed from what we said at the beginning of this year regarding the Vikings, by the way, who I am talking about. However, I found a different avenue that I don't believe we've explored on old tweets exposed. Okay. Remember when the Vikings traded for Yannick Ngakoue?
Oh, yeah. That was very exciting.
A couple of years ago. Got very exciting, right? Well, we all had very interesting takes on that, and I'm going to crescendo here. I'll start with Declan, which I know I'm self-reporting, and I am self-reporting. I probably am tamer here. But here's what I said, like, the moment the trade broke, when Judd and I had to hop on an emergency podcast. I believe even this was like when restaurants started to open back up in the middle of COVID. Because keep in mind, this happened like August of 2020, late August of 2020. So I remember rushing back from brunch, and here's what Judd and I had to say on the Ngakoue trade. Here's my
they made it hard on opposing quarterbacks. And yeah, I think a lot of teams probably looked at the Viking situations, most notably NFC North teams, and said, okay, they lost Everson Griffin. They still have Daniil Hunter, who I think everyone can recognize is obviously top 5 at what he does at his position. But how are they going to replace it? Well, now you got Ngakoue, and it makes it that much more difficult to game plan. And these are now 2 guys that you can get creative with, like you saw in the Saints game, where then they switched them up. You have obviously Daniil going on the other side, and then Everson rushes. Like, they can get so creative with how they want to rush the quarterback.
So creative. Yeah.
So creative.
You're very creative.
And Everson Griffin, top 5 guy going into 20. I don't know he was still good, but probably was a little high on Everson Griffin being top 5 going into 2020.
Yeah, no.
Little
I don't know what else you got for us here. I love that trade at the time. I thought it was a great trade.
All right, here's a little afternoon Judd on this take.
Single time. Now, on the surface, this trade is 2 things. 1, it's surprising, and 2, it's outstanding. It's outstanding because now you can pair Ngakoue at the right end, and he replaces Everson Griffin with Daniil Hunter, who also is 25. Think about this for a second. At the left end, and we're talking about Ngakoue had 8 sacks in 15 games playing banged up last year. Hunter has had back-to-back 14.5 sack seasons. This has the potential to be a complete nightmare for opposing tackles.
My favorite thing about that clip isn't how
My
excited
hair.
Judd was about it. It was the mad scientist hair.
I haven't
and
showered yet.
The shaky phone camera.
I'm not sure why the
too.
camera's shaking, but I was, yes,
I think because
I
you're
hadn't
just like
showered.
moving your arm while you're doing
Couple
the video.
things. Well, I trimmed out the beginning of that, but you literally, you pulled a Beatles line. I woke up and I did not run a comb throughout my head.
I didn't run a comb.
You were
Okay,
quoting
good.
A Day in My Life. And,
Day in the Life, yeah.
yes, it was very early in the morning. Judd was, we're in like the early pandemic stages. So,
That was
so
a
Judd
Sunday,
was like
right?
sleeping in. I think it was a Saturday. I
Okay.
think it was a Saturday morning,
Okay.
if I remember right.
It was good. No, that's
bad.
some of Judd's best hair and camera work there, I think. I think you should bring that look back. Can we just...
No.
Do you ever try like the spike
No.
kind of like Declan does? Like just sort of
Little product.
putting
Just a
some
little
gel
product.
in your hand and kind of like...
I don't like
going with
I know
it.
it looks like there's a lot of product. There actually isn't. That's just good hair jeans. That's just what that
Dawn
looks
always
like.
tells me, put product in. I'm like, no, I don't want to.
Yeah.
When's the last time you put product in your hair?
The last time she pulled me aside and put product in my hair. I don't put product in my
Which
hair.
was when? Like, give me a year.
Probably my niece. No, probably my niece's wedding in July.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
so recently. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
That's good.
July. It's December now.
Fairly recently.
5 months.
Okay. All right. What else we got?
We got
Hit-
one more
hit
take
Mac
from
and
Mackie on the Ngakoue trade, but this is now This is a reaction of when he got traded to the Ravens midseason. Because remember, he was then traded like 7 weeks later before the trade deadline. Here's what Phil had to say: more of the long-term play of the Vikings after trading Ngakoue.
And part of the problem right now for the Vikings, and just to be clear, I think the trade of Unique Ngakoue signifies the end of the Kirk Cousins era here. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know if they're going to find a trade partner. I don't know if they're going to have to just eat a ton of cap money over the next couple of seasons. But I think this now signifies the waving of the white flag on the Kirk Cousins era. It's not going to be tomorrow. Sean Mannion isn't going to start. Nate Stanley is not going to start. Kirk Cousins will probably bounce back and have a couple decent games going forward. But I think this is the first step in him not being the starting quarterback. For sure, beyond 2021, they might have to swallow something in 2021.
I've been trying to get rid of Cousins for like 3 years, haven't I?
Hater.
Yeah, I think I'll take the L. I'll take the L on that one.
The Vikings could fire an equipment guy, and Phil would be like, well, clearly that's the end for Cousins, because, I mean, the new equipment guy's not going to want to,
Yeah. By the way, get your Mr. Fourth Quarter Comeback hooded sweatshirts and t-shirts at scorenorth.com/shop. That's scorenorth.com/shop, where you can get your Mr. Fourth Quarter Comeback swag. Judd, tell the folks here of Mackie and Judd where they can find some great stocking stuffer gifts here. Spiral Light candles.
Yes, indeed. In fact, right now, if you go to spirallightcandles.com, you can check out their holiday savings. And I'm going to tell you right now, Dawn Zolgad has taken advantage because she loves these candles. They're exceptionally cool. They burn down spirally, as they say, but then there's a wick in the bottom that burns for a long time. The aromas, glorious. We've got cinnamon bark and clove, evergreen, cranberry mango, origin.
Can we get an aroma Shadoo candle?
No, but you know what you can get? A Judd's Purple Positivity candle to celebrate the purple success and to calm you when moments get a little bit tense, as they have throughout the course of the season. SpiralLightCandles.com for a birthday, for the holidays, whatever you're celebrating. Your mom, your girlfriend, your wife's going to love it. SpiralLightCandles.com.
Love it. All right, there it is. Mackie and Judd, a little reckless speculation Thursday here. It's a safe space, okay? You know, if you like Karl-Anthony Towns as a franchise player, okay,
or Kirk Cousins,
or Cousins, yes. This is a safe space to speculate on the future of Minnesota sports teams. We'll see you guys for Feedback Friday tomorrow.